After a week off in Formula One, we come back to Albert Park, one of the most chaotic tracks in history of Formula One. This Formula One track has been on the grid since 1996. Formerly, it was in Adelaide. Now it's the Albert Park circuit in Melbourne. And it has given us a lot of shocking, amazing, exquisite moments in our sport. To name a few of them, going at least in yearly order, we can go over Ralf Schumacher taking flight class in turn 1. Now this is, in my opinion, one of the most craziest crashes when it comes to height achieved in a Formula One car. He definitely flew for a little bit, and I wonder what it felt like flying in an F1 car. Braun GP shocking us in 2009. Now, while in preseason testing, it was pretty obvious they were the fastest car, to still come out and do what they did and win the 2009 season just signified how good that Braun car was, and seeing it perform like it did in Australia was a thing of beauty and probably a story that will never be told again in Formula One, unfortunately. We had the crazy Alonso incident, to where some people call it a spectacular crash, but it's a very lucky to survive crash from Fernando Alonso, and literally launched into the air 46 Gs. That car looked completely busted after that crash, and thankfully we still have Fernando on the grid today. He even says walking out of the car, he's like, my mom will be watching on TV. I had to walk out and say I was okay, even though you look at the guy, he was distraught. It was definitely a crazy and a very scary crash to watch from one of our favorite Formula One drivers on the grid. We also had Daniel Ricciardo in 2014 getting on the podium, and 5 hours later getting hit with a disqualification due to his engine getting too much fuel into it and giving a little bit of a boost of performance. That's kind of similar to what happened to Ferrari in 19, but on only one Grand Prix, not for the whole season, pretty much, to when they were cracked out on that engine. Now, another very unfortunate, but a very Haas-like moment was the pit stop failure when Roman Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen were running 5th and 6th. Now, we know Haas to start off the season really well and then end it terribly. And this was just another one of those years. That was 2018. They had the funny Rich Energy livery in that time period. Running 5th and 6th probably would have been one of their best finishes ever. And what do? They jack up 2 pit stops, and both the tires are not connected properly to the car going out of the pit lane, and both cars have to retire literally right after the pit stop. It was so unfortunate and an absolute disaster for the Haas team. In 2022, we had the Charles Leclerc blowout. That's where we saw the Ferrari actually dominate on a proper track where tire wear did not matter at all. I will talk about that later in the video. That is an important thing to think about. 2023, we saw Max win, but with 3 red flags: the crazy Alpine crash, we had Logan Sargent going into the back of an AlphaTauri, we had Fernando Alonso spinning after the 3rd red flag, calling it out, saying that the reorder has to get reshuffled, still gave him a podium at the end, even after spinning. Lance went out, almost lost his P4. I mean, it was a ridiculous and a chaotic race in 2023. It was definitely fun. A lot of people were saying a lot of red flags, but we all enjoy a very chaotic, very insane type of race, and that's what I'm hoping for in 2024. But let's go over the track details, traction, tires, you know how it goes. The Albert Park track, as I said, was built in 1996, and it has been on the grid every single year with the exception of the years that we had that virus that I can't say on YouTube. But yes, when that virus was going around, that is when Albert Park wasn't on the Formula One calendar, but it is back in good fashion and was repaved in 2022. That is actually an important thing. The actual lap record is held by Sergio Perez with a 1 minute 20, 58 laps, and it is usually a 1 stop. Now, last year we had C2 to C4 tires here. They're going now to the softest from C3 to C5. This track, as I said, was repaved in 2022. So that means that tire wear here is pretty much non-existent. Out of every track we get on the grid, on Jeddah, it was pretty much non-existent. Here, you don't even feel it at all. The tires, like Alex Albon proved in 2022, can last the whole entire race if you are on the hards. I think the same thing is going to happen this year, to where it's a 1 stop, and most cars will not be affected by tire wear at all, if anything. It is also a front-ended track. Now, there are some parts that are rear limited as well, like turns 3, 4, and 5. The first sector can be somewhat rear limited, but front is more important, especially going into the high speed sectors. And with that out of the way, let's go over a lap in Albert Park. Starting off going into turn 1, that whole straight going into turn 1 is a DRS zone, 1 of 4 on the Albert Park track. The way you got to set up turn 2 is important from turn 1 going all the way to the left, setting up a very important turn 2 that turns into another DRS sector. Now, overtakes will mainly happen probably here in 3 and 4 after the second DRS. It is a very tricky track to actually overtake on. DRS trains happen here a lot, but if your car has the top speed advantage, I'll tell you another DRS zone that will help you overtake very shortly. This first sector is a lot of short corners, so Aston Martin, Mercedes are going to be very strong here. This is where I think they'll have most of their advantage, and if they can keep that advantage, it would be very smart for them in sectors 2 and 3. Now, sector 2 going into it after turn 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 is pretty much straights with the exception of turn 6. Now, turn 6, Alex Albon went off here last year when he was P6 for a little bit in the race. 7 and 8 can be a little bit tricky if it's wet. Now, how you go on the throttle here is very important if you're going to get as much max speed as you can. It is a very fast zone, and this is one of the highest speeds on a track we get throughout the whole entire calendar year because of the 4 DRS zones and in general a lot of straights on here. Now, as I said, you're pretty much full flat out in sector 2. It's just 6 to 9, and then that last sector has high speed and low speed. Turns 9 to 10 is where I think the Formula 1 car truly comes live. And if I was able to watch this in person, I would love to see it, because watching it on camera, seeing some of those spectacular views of the car hitting the ground, those flares coming up, but how they just stick with the downforce going into turns 9 and 10, it's a thing of beauty. And I genuinely think it's the best part of the track because it's tricky, but it rewards a lot of lap time if you have the confidence to go for it, how you should be going for it. Now, 11, 12, 13, and 14 are all short corners. So the low speed corners in this track are predominantly in sector 1 and the end of sector 3. So cars with low corner speed should actually be pretty strong here. There's only a couple of sections with a high speed, some medium speed, but we've seen teams with those actual strengths like last year do well. So it's a track that offers everything, and the best balanced cars usually win out here. Now let's go over the best, the worst teams, and my top 5. So I want to start off with the best and the worst teams, then I'll give you my top 5. I think that makes the most sense. The best teams here, now the top 5 here are going to be very close. It's a track that offers a lot of different strengths and weaknesses, so the actual top 5 are going to actually properly see instead of Bahrain and Jeddah, where there are different track characteristics. Bahrain is very tire dependent, and Jeddah is weird when it comes to straight line speed and making that compromise. Here, it's pretty much all medium downforce. Some teams might go low, medium downforce, but the teams with the best pace usually win out here. No tire wear at all. And I think the best teams coming into here, maybe number 3 catches you by surprise, I'm going to say Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Red Bull. My thoughts on Aston Martin is the tire wear here is minimal, and I think they're truly the 3rd best car in qualifying, very close to Ferrari and Red Bull. It's race pace where they lose it, but with no tire wear, it's going to be a tricky track for other cars to actually catch them. I do think McLaren and Mercedes will be very close as well. Now, the top 3 worst teams, Alpine is definitely going to be in there. It's going to be a really tricky track for them, and overall, until they bring upgrades, they will continue to be the worst car. I do think Williams is going to do a lot better here. I think that Sauber car is still really weak, so I have them in the worst teams, and I got to put in Haas just because it's another 3. But the Haas car has improved a lot, but I think tire wear has really saved them through Jeddah and Bahrain. Racing Bulls will also be pretty close to Haas. I think Williams will actually be the best car here out of that lower midfield. Now my top 5 drivers, going over the top 3 teams. This is the order I think we're going to get. Now, I'm going to tell you if it's wet or dry, it will change the running order in my opinion. I'm going to be pretty bold here just to let you know, but it is a prediction at the end of the day. But I am going to use what I think the car's strengths and weaknesses obviously are. So let's just get into it very fast. At P5, I'm going to put Lando Norris. I still think the McLaren is going to perform very highly here. I just don't think it's going to be the top out of the top. I think Fernando Alonso is going to get P4. At P3, 2, and 1, these are all pretty much interchangeable to me. I think Carlos Sainz is going to come back with a vengeance. I think all cars are going to be close here. Perez didn't have the greatest race last year. I think it's not going to be great here as well. It's a tricky track. I think it doesn't go to his strengths that they usually do with the high speed stuff. So I'm not going to have Perez in my top 5. I'm going to put Carlos Sainz at 3. I'm going to put Max Verstappen at P2 and Charles Leclerc at P1. Now, as I said, bold prediction, if it's dry, Ferrari has a chance. Tire wear is the only thing holding them back against Red Bull. I genuinely think it's this close without the tire wear issue. There's no tire wear. We saw what they did in 2022 with a heavy tire wear car. They're going to be faster. It's going to be very close, and qualifying will matter. If Carlos and Charles can get ahead of Max into turn 1 due to qualifying, it's going to be tough for Max to actually catch them here. Now, let's see. Maybe Perez surprises me and he pulls off a mad one, which wouldn't shock me. Perez has surprised me a lot before. I hope he does. I like when Perez does good. If it's wet, Max Verstappen is the best driver in the grid. I just think in the wet, nobody is competitive enough with him yet. Lewis is really good. I don't think the car is underneath him to actually get that highly in the wet. It is forecasted for the 3 days to get practice 1, 2 to 3 and qualifying and the race all wet. So we'll have to see. If that's the case, Max victory. But if it's dry, it's going to be a lot closer, and I expect a chaotic race. I'd love to hear your opinion down in the comments below. Leave your prediction. What are your best and worst teams? And did you guys enjoy the video? Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.